Hi all, very good morning. In the previous demo, I have explained all the course content and what are all the different topics that will be a part of this hands-on core performance engineering, including .NET, Java from basic level to an advanced level. I have also clearly explained on how the course will be planned and what are all the different basic level scenarios, advanced level scenarios, okay, which will help who is a beginner to the 10 years or 12 years experienced candidate to really understand what exactly will happen in real time, right from the non-functional requirement gathering till the sign off, involving in all involving in each and every individual phase of performance testing life cycle, engineering life cycle, NFR gathering, scripting, building a capacity model right from the scratch for any complex system that you want to test. Okay, defining the KPIs, avoiding all the common mistakes in performance testing. All these things will be taught from right from the basic to the advanced mode. Okay, so today's class is all about something called non-functional requirement gathering. This is the second demo. So most of you most of you are not sure about how you have to define non-functional requirement gathering or how do you get it from the clients. Most of the scenarios are basically even the customers who are giving you some assignments in performance testing, right, from both organizational level and client level. Most of the customers, they simply have budget, but they are not completely sure about from where they have to start. What is uh, performance testing? How, what is the approach or what is the efficient process that you have to follow for doing all these performance testing practices, right? So if you take any of the project, you'll be working in any of the centralized team, or you'll be working as a one man show, like who will be taking part of all the activities like monitoring, database tuning, web server tuning, application server tuning, irrespective of any technology that you're using, right? If your application is that is being tested on containerized based environments, or if the application is tested on uh, some on-premise setup or a cloud performance testing, if it is a Java application in a distributed architecture which is sitting on both on-premise and cloud. So you need to understand how the application is working, and then accordingly you have to define the roadmap of how it has to be started, what are all the different areas, critical scenarios that you have to test. All these things are really important. But again, the reason for taking this concept for the second demo is most of the performance engineers even today, who's having 1 year experience to 10 years 15 years experience, they'll fail to identify what are the NFRs, okay, how to create a test data environment setup, what is the size of test data environment that you need for your performance testing. All these things, they really not sure of what and all has to be collected to adhere some efficient approach or process for performance testing, right? Also, you have we have many common mistakes that every performance engineer or every team that is sitting across the project will uh, I mean they are not completely enabled to give you all the information from the different teams. Okay, before you start performance testing project, you need to understand what are the common mistakes that has to be avoided, and how you have to gather all the NFRs to load tests efficiently, right? So if you look here, there are some table of contents that you can see. If you see the general information, not every company or not every customer will directly give you the complete NFRs. Let's say that you have different cases. The application is already, the case one can be the application is already there in production, but it is not performance tested. Okay. The second one is the application is already there in production. You have performance tested with 2500 users maximum handling capacity. It, for this release you have to test with 15,000 users. Okay. The third case is the application is not there in production. The application, everything, the development, everything is starting right from the scratch, and it is where you have to gather all the complete non-functional requirement gathering inputs from all the respective teams before you start load testing, right? And the fourth case is the client or the customer who is giving you some performance testing project is simply having the budget, right? He doesn't know what how really performance matters for his own application. In such scenarios, a performance engineer has to make the customer to understand how the performance improvements will help the return of investment of his business, or how the user base will get increased if the percentage of performance has improved on his own application, right? In such cases, the performance engineer will be only the person who has to define the roadmap, who will make the customer to understand from where exactly it has to start. He has to define the process. He has to avoid all the common mistakes that every time in every project that every performance engineer is doing. So he has to take all these activities. He has to get in touch base with all the respective teams, right? For example, the application, the war file or EAR file, after the unit testing from the development side, it will be deployed on WebLogic server or WebSphere application server or JBoss or Apache Tomcat. Okay, most of the services based companies will have a dedicated team to deploy that war file. And even now today, most of the the performance engineers who are working with the centralized teams don't know how to connect or how to use connection strings to connect the war file with the database server, right? If you understand it correctly. So if you take and the product based companies or level 4 companies, who is working as a one man, like who is taking care of all the end to end activities in performance testing. He is the one who is actually identifying the requirements, who is preparing his own test plan, who is preparing the test strategy, the test estimation part. Then he'll create his own test data setup used for performance testing. Then he will decide what are the different flavors of testings that has to perform. He'll identify the critical business scenarios. Okay, he'll understand what is that he has to really analyze by selecting all the different metrics from web app db servers from both client side and server side. What is that he has to monitor from the database server, and how the load balancer is implemented in a distributed architecture. So all these things he'll have a very clear idea, because he'll be the only person who is taking care of all these activities. But whereas in some of the services based companies, you have to follow strict approaches or processes from the center of excellence team, or if you're working for any of the BFSA client, right, like Morgan Stanley or Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase, they have their predefined approach, right? Even the selection of the tool of that application with respect to the requirements is done from some team called performance center of excellence, who will give you the 50% of the plan, and you have to follow it accordingly. So the intention of explaining this session is, every performance engineer, for every one of them, they have some few points that has to be avoided for better performance when we test, monitor, analyze, or when we engineer, tune any of the servers. Okay, so many of the scripts, right? You actually design it from any tool like JMeter or LoadRunner or anything. But when you want to run it concurrently or simultaneously, you need to have some workload, right? And again, not every performance engineer is directly designing the workload modeling, or he or she is not completely designing the capacity model for the application that he is testing. This is not happening from the performance teams directly. Okay, so monitoring is enabled from some of the teams. So there is a separate teams for some of the companies, APM teams, okay, who are actually taking care of all the monitoring tools of various system tiers like web app db tiers. And if you want to monitor anything in specific, you need to raise a ticket to enable the monitoring team to monitor a specific metric. If you want to create an alert, if you want an alert if the CPU is exceeding on a database server, if it is exceeding 90%, you need an alert on email. Configuring an alert, okay, configuring an alarm on that specific metric on the database server, it is not the performance engineer who is doing it. There are some other teams, APM admins, the persons who are working in Dynatrace, they are actually creating all these alerts or anomalies or alarms to understand whenever you get some kind of exceeding beyond the threshold values, it will give you something. I mean, something is not working or something is abnormal. So again, if you take this session right, if you take this training will help you to understand all the different several roles that you will have, that you will see in a project. Okay, like the configuration or the downloading of agent, the configuration of agents to the target servers that you wanted to monitor, or if you want to create the complete environment of web server installation, app server installation, database server installation, monitoring all the different uh, areas of database. Okay, like the environment side, that schema of the database or the execution plan or the number of tables. Can to understand all of them, we are deploying some of the sample applications in Java, which is deployed on Oracle WebLogic connected to database server. Okay, all the profilers are connected like JProfiler, JConsole, JVisual VM. All of them are connected. And if you take the .NET sample application, that is deployed in IAS server, which is connected to SQL Server and MySQL database. Okay, when the test is happening, you will understand what are all the metrics that you have to monitor, how you have to take heap dump, thread dump, how to read the heap dump file, how the memory leaks are happening. All these things will clearly show you to give you the real hands-on experience. Okay, we'll also give you some of the sample applications where you will be able to create your own setup. Okay, and you can record by using load runner or JMeter with 50 users by default. You can access the application from the front end. You can connect any of the open source monitoring tool to your local host. And if you're, for example, if you're running a test for 30 minutes or 1 hour, you can see what is happening inside the test. Okay, so the first point, if you take the common mistakes, the first point is this is the non-functional requirement gathering document. I don't know how many of you follow this process. Okay, every time before you define or identify the NFRs, non-functional requirement gathering, it is called non-functional requirement gathering. Many companies use different terminologies. Some people NFRs, non-functional requirement gathering, and SOW, statement of work. Some people call it as SLAs, service level agreements, and some companies, product-based companies, they call it as BVMs, business volume metrics, and yeah, and again, some of them from different places they call it as KPIs, key performance indicators. Okay, let's make this session interactive. Before we would, I would, before I talk in-depth concepts of this non-functional requirement gathering. So, I have a question to all of you. I don't have anything in my hand. This is the first time I'm doing an application development. The application just started. There is no competitor in the market. Okay, so there are some features that I'm developing. Once it is developed, once it is deployed in QA environment, you have to do performance testing on it. So what is your approach and how do you gather the client questionnaire, non-functional requirement gathering?
So first thing, based on our previous experience, for example, let's say if it's a banking application, so we would be having some kind of previous experience with the banking, right? So we will go with some NFRS questions like what to test, how many users, what is the hardware configuration, are there any servers behind the load balancers, like how many concurrent users for each business scenario, what is the throughput. So we'll go with all these questions. We have to whether we have to test it globally or at particular location.
Okay. But how do you identify all of these parameters when you don't have anything in hand?
It's what. So we'll connect with concerned SMEs like module owners. We'll explain them what we want, and then we get this information from them.
Okay.
First, we just need to identify what they want before what we want is a secondary thing actually.
Right.
First thing is that we just need to identify that what is that, because if anybody's application is doing, because in most of the company I've seen that, okay, nobody knows what to test actually. So we'll have to educate the BAs and all, because in some of the company which is being handled by the internal employees, okay, that is not exposed to the outside world, okay, though they don't even know that what to test and how to performance test. So we'll have to educate them, we'll have to do the some training, okay, this is what we are looking for. So in that way we'll have to do series of meetings, they can understand that what we are looking for and what's my expectation, what is our expectation, in order to help them actually. So we are not going to go anything very very detailed. First we'll have to identify the what are the most critical functionality that they wanted us to test actually. Okay, the first approach will be the, if we get some information, for example, so we'll have to showcase something with the single user, the baseline test, just to ensure that these are the business scenario that you have told us to test, and I'm just testing with the single user, just wanted to let you know that how it's performing actually. Once
Right.
we give some demo, then they will understand that okay, this is what we are getting. In that way they will come to understand, okay, so these are the things that you are showing giving us, okay, and based on that we'll set up separate meeting, okay, then we can explain our requirement in the detail actually. Because if the client doesn't know that what information that they will have to provide, even though they don't know how to create the document for the NFRs and all these things. So first we'll have to educate them actually.
Right.
Then
Actually, most important phase, this is the one of the most important phase in any of the performance testing life cycle and engineering life cycle. Okay. Because the main reason is, before you start any of the project, right, most of the NFRs are missed. Okay. Most of the NFRs or SLAs, okay, they are commonly missed, they are misunderstood, and or they are misrepresented. Okay. Sorry, they are misrepresented by types of requirements by most of the customers and organizations. If you take any of the customers, right, they really don't know what is the exact scope, what is the plan, what is the objective of doing performance testing. Okay. So for that reason, as someone explained just now, if you want to get the clear requirements of your projects from both customer side and organization side, every individual who is sitting across the project or a product team must understand what non-functional requirements are. Okay. So how best you can get the complete information out of it, and what is the value add in that you can bring by doing this particular performance testing for this release or for this product, by getting all the complete information of all the from all the different teams. Okay. So most of the times, even the customers are very sensitive, they'll not allow you to talk, or they understand it in a very wrong way actually. They are for example, you cannot expect a response time of 1.5 seconds or 1.2 seconds for a payment gateway process, right? If you take any of the application, right, uh, there is something called target times. They are broken into bits and pieces. uh, for the first time, for example, if a user physically sitting in front of the machine, who is called end user, physically sitting in front of his laptop or a machine, trying to open some application, entering the URL of the application, invoking a home page. He gives his username and password and he clicks on login. Then it sends a request to the server and it gets a response back. So what really happens when he sends a request? The request first goes to the firewall, then it gets authenticated, then it goes to the load balancer. In the load balancer, it will identify which server is handling less number of requests, For example, if you have server 1, server 2, and server 3, the first server is handling 900 requests, the second server is handling 300 requests, and the third server is handling some 600 plus requests. So the load balancer will identify that the server 2 is handling less number of requests, and it will redirect that particular request to this server, right? Depending upon the load balancing algorithm that you're selecting. Okay, it goes to the web server, then it goes to the app server, it completes the business logic there, and from application server it hits the database server, the respective table of which where the application is accessing. Then it will run a SQL query for everything, and it will fetch the response, and it will give you the response saying that once you click on login, the user clicks on login, the respective home page uh, of that user will be displayed. For example, I am logging in as arcade performance zone something. When I logged in, I'll see that welcome arcade, you have 12 unread emails or something if it is an email application. So in the same way, so you have to understand all the user stories, okay, all the non-functional requirements of your application, of your product for best results. If any of the requirement is changing in middle of your implementation, that will waste your time, that will waste your license of your application, everything. If you don't select the right tool, for example, many of the people will use LoadRunner instead of JMeter. The reason is because the support, the forum, or the issues that you get, right, they'll be fixed by the Micro Focus team. If you raise a ticket, they'll get back to you in the next 8 hours. But it's not the case with JMeter. JMeter, you have open forums, but you don't have a dedicated forum who can actually uh, it redirects to the web server. Okay, so that is the first one, right? Okay.
I have one question. I have one question. Suppose if we have one applications, okay, and we have four different app server, okay, and do we have one-to-one mapping between app server or web application server, or there will be one web server and we have four app server,
no, no, that
or
is
one domain?
no, that is actually decided by in the design phase. We'll talk about that in detail in another article. There is a performance engineering design phase and hardware sizing. So that is the place where they decide how many web servers you need, how many app servers you need, or how many database servers you need. It is not one-to-one mapping. There are some of the performance engineering best practices that they'll implement when they are designing the environment setup. Okay, so in that way we can expect the better response times. If any of the mapping from web to app or app to DB is inefficient, right, it will take a lot of time for processing the request, and it will impact the response times of the entire system. It can show the complete negative impact on the entire system. Okay, so when I talk about this missing NFRs or SLAs, most of the performance teams or the engineers who are working in different teams, they're not completely sure about what information they need. Okay, what is the complete, what is the exact objective of the customer. In that way, they are really commonly missed, they are misunderstood. There is a gap always every time. If the requirement is being changed after a month, after 2 months of starting your project, if the requirement is changed, then it will be a problem for everyone. If you're selecting a wrong tool, I mean, for example, you're doing a lot of R&D to record the script. Okay, there are so much of other excess header files or something is being passed into the request, and that is being not captured by any of the tool. After do, if you are planning for a POC for any of the stakeholder, after a team with 6 to 8 people working in the project for 2 months and realizing that this tool will not suffice our need, right, you will not get the business. The customer will not give the opportunities. Instead of giving all the opportunities to TCS because of uh, not selecting the right tool, he's not satisfied, and he may give the business to some other vendor like Accenture or IBM. So you have to be very careful. You have to touch base with each and every person who is sitting across the product team. You need to talk to them about all the different parameters that you need for your non-functional testing, and you need to give proper inputs to the stakeholders after understanding the application architecture, the user behavior, or you have to clearly define the performance goals, okay, to successfully conduct your load testing and identify the performance bottlenecks, right? So for any performance engineer, it is very, very important to understand the impact of each and every individual non-functional requirement, okay, that he or she is implementing irrespective of years of experience you have. You should be a part of this phase, and the NFRs has to be defined. You have to be ask all of the different questions to all the teams to finalize your requirements. For example, there are some of the crucial items that you have to understand. The first one is the overall picture in terms of goals of building a product. For example, if you take any of the application, right, every user from beginner to moderate user, he will register into the application, he will log in, right? If you take Gmail application, how many percentage of users are really using can't access my account functionality in a day or in an hour? It is a very low prioritized functionality, right? If you take another example, how many users in an application are using step 2 verification in the Gmail application? It must be hardly 5 to 10% again, right? So in that way, you need to understand the criticality of each and every individual use case, the functionality. You need to understand the cost aspects of handling the non-functional requirement gathering, okay, how the development process is happening, when you have to start performance testing. Is that after completion of your development life cycle, or in parallel with the development, or do you have some iterative process uh, where you have to test every month or every 15 days, or for every release, or for every hot fix that comes as part of your release, okay? So you have to break all these NFRs into stories, and you have to define some of the acceptance criteria, okay? You have to give that into sprints, and you have to execute all of them accordingly. Only in that way, if you're adopting some kind of agile process, breaking your stories into bits and pieces, you can measure the performance of your application from release to release, okay? And most importantly, the end user perspective, right, of non-functional requirements gathering is very, very important. Performance engineers has to understand all the requirements from by talking to end users, by getting the real feedback from real users, all right? So if you take the non-functional requirements, this is the document. I don't know how many of you follow this approach, but in any company, any organization, if you have a performance COE, how do you gather the non-functional requirement is the most important question. You will have a client questionnaire document or non-functional requirement gathering document, where you will be listing all the number of questions in a document, and you'll send it across to different teams that are working for your product or an application. So if you take the first section, right, this is the standard template that I have. But if you take the templates differs from, again, from companies to companies, okay? So if you take the general information, in the first general information section, you are asking what is the main purpose of testing the application. Are you testing the application in the production or pre-production, or are you testing for the reason you have changed the infrastructure or hardware software, you have changed the versions of software, or you increased the size of hardware from 32 GB to 64 GB RAMs on application servers, or if you are changing the SGA version on your Oracle. If anything is changed, if you're doing performance testing, you need to understand for what reason you're doing performance testing of your application. You need to be very specific. Then only you will be able to understand what is the percentage of performance that has been improved. You have to define the right scope, clear agenda. You need to understand the complete performance goals of your application, for what reason you're really testing, okay? And the second point, where is that you are conducting all your performance testing activities? Is that on production environment? Is that on QA environment, which is a shared environment for developers, for manual testing folks, and for performance testing people? If you're working on a shared environment, you will be shooting out an email to all the teams saying that I'm executing a 4 hours test on this environment. Please do not execute anything or debug anything on this environment. You will notify it to the development team and also to the manual testing team not to do anything. If it is a shared environment, if it is a production environment, you will be doing all these testing activities over the weekends, especially on Sundays from night 12 o'clock till morning 4 o'clock. You will be keeping your application in maintenance, the production application. You will stop access to the real users. You will make that unavailable and you will do your own testing in order to avoid the extra load during your load test. Okay, the third one is most important point: creating a test environment right from the scratch. Okay, is it the exact replica of production environment? Is it the mirror image of production environment? Is it 1/3 or 1/4 size of your production environment? Okay, depending upon the budget, cost, depending upon the licenses that you get for all the different web app DB servers. Okay, if it is a Dockerized, containerized, if you're deploying your microservices application or Kubernetes, all these things you have to uh, overlook. You have to close everything, monitor. You have to monitor everything, and you have to decide accordingly. This is one of the most important part, right? Uh, Testing on prod, testing on the mirror image of production environment will give you the exact results, the close results to the production. I told you, right? If you think of simple business case, what are all the performance issues that you're seeing on a database server? You'll not see the same issues on your QA environment, performance environment. The reason is because if you take the performance, the production environment, right? Lot of things on the database in production environment will happen. So many batch jobs will be running. The backups will be running. The the recovery will be running. Lot of other things will be running, which will somehow impact some percentage of performance. It is not the case in performance testing environment. Performance testing environment database server will have some impact only when you're doing load testing. That's all. If some users are doing some activities on the database server, the numbers of the metrics on the database will change. But it is not the case on production database server. Production database server will have too many things running in the background. If your CPU utilization on production database server is 33%, it is not same. Your CPU utilization on the performance testing environment, it can be up to 45% or 48% utilization. But the main important point here is how do you differentiate the results between if you're running if your customer wants to run a test on both performance testing environment on prod, the same both of them are with these. You are trying to run 400 users load test for 4 hours. The numbers are completely changed, right? The utilizations on the database servers are changed, and the test performance environments are different. The utilizations on the production environment database server are different. If the customer is asking you what is the reason for the utilizations, big change in utilizations on both databases in production and performance environments, can anyone tell me if I am getting 60% of the utilization on prod, if I'm getting 79% utilization on test environment, how do you explain this to the stakeholder?
Are they both identical servers? I mean, the same size of configuration?
Same configurations, same versions of software, same hardware, software. You ran the load test with 400 users for 4 hours, but the response times are different, the utilizations are different. Even some of the SQL queries that are long running queries, okay, which are taking very long time in QA performance environment, you are not seeing the same queries in prod environment. How do you explain this case to the customer?
So, queries are depending on the amount of data available on the environment. For example, in production, we have seen 1,000 records. When we conduct a load test, we have seen around like 6,000 records, which is the 5 times more than the existing production data. So we can say like this amount of data we have seen. After reaching certain amount of data, we found a few transactions are consuming more response time. For example, these are the things. So we are retrieving data from the database or like that. So we can explain this one of the scenario, point out why it is taking more time and which query is taking time consumed, and before starting the load test how much amount of data is there, and after completion of the load test how much amount of the data is there. And if we run for 7 to 8 runs, we need to calculate the data how much amount of data is incremental gradually, and we need to compare with the production environment. So based on that we can give the inputs to the business client. Because of this reason, so in future we may face some database issues because of vast amount of data. We need to tune so and so queries like that.
Right. So if you take the production database, right, you'll be having some hundreds of tables with lakhs of records, right? But that is not the case with the performance testing environment database server. So you have to you are testing, you are trying to simulate the real scenario in a performance testing environment. Like you'll be using some kind of real data, okay, with the real code when you test it. But when you test it on the performance testing environment, right, which is a replica or a mirror image of production, you will not be having all that tables. You will not be having such huge volume of data. You will be creating some 5 lakhs, 2 lakhs records of, or 80,000 records of data that you need for your load testing for 4 hours duration. You will execute accordingly. But whereas in the production, that's not the case. It will have so many applications connected to the database server, and this is one of your application. Whatever the application that you're testing, right, this is one among them, and the data is shared among multiple applications. So many parameters are there to differentiate it, but you have to be very careful when you are letting the customer to understand what is the big difference when you are seeing some different numbers on production environment and testing environment, when you have a similar kind identical hardware software, everything is same, okay, which is very similar. So the third thing is you need to identify what are all the flavors that you have to do in your performance testing environment. Why you need to do load testing? Most of us basically do load testing, right? So some of them, they do stress testing to identify the breaking point of your application. There are ways to stress it. Okay, you want at least stress your application by limiting your bandwidth, by to limiting it to 56 Mbps. You know that your application maximum handling capacity is only 2000 users, but you wantedly run a test with 2500 users to see how the response times are recording, or how to understand the user behavior, to understand the performance of all the different servers in the architecture. You wantedly stress it to identify the breaking point, or which server is crashing first, which user out of 2500 users is the first failed user. To understand all of that, you are clearly asking your customer what are all the different types of flavors of performance testings that you have to do. Some reliability testing, you know, right, reliability testing, some change has been implemented on the test environment, you're not giving it to production. You want to run a test and you want to see if it is working fine or not. You want to run the same test with 2500 users, something which you can trust on. It is just a random assumption, and you see what is that really happening. You can't do this trial and error method on production environment again. You try something, you try some new feature, and you do some performance test on your application on a QA environment, which is a reliable test. You run the test for 2 hours or 3 hours, and you monitor all of them in one place, right? So you have to identify all the types of testings. You have to send it to, this question has to be added, and you have to ask what are all the levels of testings that are being a part of performance testing. The reason why you ask this question is, there are some code snippets, right? You must have heard about something called shift left performance testing. Uh, I have told you this point in the previous session as well. The traditional performance testing days have gone. If as in the earlier, when I was looking for some good opportunities before 6 years, when I have some 2 to 3 years of experience in performance testing, that time there was a question, when you actually do performance testing. The answer is, whenever after completion of functional testing, once the application is functionally stable and the application is with zero errors, you do performance testing. Now it's not the case. Now people have, many of the companies, with the emerging tech stack, they have adopted a practice called early performance testing. Whenever you develop some piece of code to make something to work, you test the performance of it. You test the performance of it at the API level, at the unit level, at the web service level. You run it with 25 users, 50 users, 100 users, and you check all the utilizations, and you give the result. When that piece of code is integrated to another piece of code, which is again doing some combined functionality, again, by combining all these APIs or web services together, okay, you run a test with the same user base and you publish the result. So it is very important to understand what are all the different levels of testings that you have to perform before you start this performance testing. Okay, and again, many of the organizations, many of the companies who just started performance testing recently, or if the customer is not willing to spend any of his money on the performance testing, he's asking you to use all the open source tech stack, open source tools and all. People do testing with 50 users, which comes by default in the load runner free trial, and they don't have a monitoring tool. So without having a monitoring tool for your application, without getting enabled, or without using any of the open source, any monitoring tool for your application, it will be very difficult for all of us to identify any of the performance degradations. For every server, it has its own metrics, it has its numbers, and it is important for all of us, the performance teams, to monitor all the infra from client side and server side, including the load balancer. If you have some privileges access to monitor them, you can monitor all of them. And there is a process for it in performance engineering: understanding the user level metrics, system level metrics, server level metrics, operational level metrics, network level metrics. That will help every performance engineer to easily identify and address the performance issues, which will help the other teams to give a potential fix as well. Okay, doing performance testing without a monitoring tool, like, it will waste a lot of time of yours. It is not an efficient approach, and whatever the results that you see, all of them will be some kind of predictions and assumptions, where you cannot guarantee your customer that to this extent, with this response times, the application will work fine. You cannot say that. Got it? So you need to ask, do you have the continuous monitoring of your application whenever your test is running? Okay, and you'll be asking the schedule of your test. You'll be asking the approximate timeline for the project that you're testing. uh, okay, the complete list of failure tests, and most importantly, you need to have a steady state duration. Testing your application for 30 minutes or 1 hour will not help you at all. Okay, keeping the small low test duration, whatever the results that you're seeing, that results will not guarantee anything actually. Okay, so you need to have a steady state minimum of 3 to 6 hours when you run a test, and only then you will see some continuous allocation on the memory or CPU, continuous hitting on the application. There is some load that will be generated on all the servers, and you can see the behavior of it. Okay, so steady state is important to have 3 to 6 hours. Some people run it so endurance tests, right? They run for 4 hours to 16 hours, 4 days, 5 days, so many things. Okay, so total number of scenarios that you need to ask, I told you, right? You need to identify the criticality of each and every individual scenario. How many users are accessing a functionality called register new user? How many of the users are clicking on can't access my account, forget password, all these things. So you're also asking the list of scripts. Okay, depending upon the complexity of the scripts, you decide depending upon the number of steps. Okay, if simple, it is 4 to 8 steps, medium it is 8 to 12, high complex, there are few applications which will have some 20 to 30 transactions. For example, if you take any insurance application, right, you need to submit a lot of data from the user side. You have to navigate some 20 to 30 screens. They are called transactions in our load runner script or geometry script. When you run this application, if any of the application is not stable, if it is having some functional issues, if it is not efficient, after recording some 20 scripts, sorry, 20 steps, okay, you still have 5 transactions to record. The load runner says that record the application is not responding. The Vusion goes into not responding state, right? You will wait for some time. Even then, the script is not generated, and the vugen.exe process will automatically close. The firing of events from the recording will stop, and it will fail to record all the HTTP HTML request and response, right? So you have to record very carefully, and if some of the scripts, some of the steps or transactions are not getting recorded, not every tool will completely record everything from your application. If you have 25 transactions, it may not record 3 or 4 transactions. You need to talk to the developer. You need to write a web custom request for that particular transaction. Am I right? So you need to identify all of them. Again, you cannot come back saying that this tool is not helping me. The .NET application that I'm currently recording with web HTTP HTML, out of 25 transactions, it is generating some 15 plus dynamic IDs where I have to correlate all of them. Even after correlating, the application is failing. It is failing randomly. The 15th user is failing, 68th user is failing, different transactions are failing. So that is why the reason you are using fiddlers, you're using some other tools like Wireshark to see, you're using some developer tools to understand if every request is having HTTP 200, and if you see any forbidden 403 500 error in any of the request, then you will go back to the development team and ask, why is this happening? Okay, you need to have that skills. You need to identify the complexity of the scripts, and you have to select the tool accordingly. Okay, you also also ask the customers how many of the scenarios that you need to identify as part of this uh, performance testing assignment. How many of them are critical scenarios? How many load runner scripts or JMeter scripts are required to conduct the load test? Okay, this is all the general information. If you look at this section, setting up the test environment, this is the most challenging phase in any of the performance testing environment, right? The reason is because many of the organization, they deny to give the exact mirror image of production environment. They'll ask you to test everything on 1/4 size of prod environment. So I have a question here. If you have a 1/4 size of your performance testing environment, you have tested with 2000 users, but whereas you are supposed to test with 8000 users. If you have a production like environment, you can test with 8000 users, but here you have 1/4 size of your prod like environment. That is why the reason you are testing with 2000 users. Now tell me, when you're testing with 2000 users on 1/4 size of prod environment, which is a performance testing environment, do you tell your customer, if you're testing with 8,000 users on testing environment, these are all the results that you can see? Do you multiply this 2000 by 4 and you give the results, or how do you conclude that to the customer?
So based on the configuration, whenever we conduct a load test for load test environment for following configuration, this is how it is going to be handled. And we can say, we can't say like accurate values for the production environment, but we can say the approximate information which can handle. So
Mhm.
even, but sometimes we may get some failures in the production. They will question us. There may be a chance of that. So which we faced in our organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other answers? You understood my question?
So basically, we do extrapolation with our current results to the production, and then on assumption only we can say with this given hardware, so we are able to support these many users. So if we want to handle production kind of load, we may need this kind of additional hardware. So, I mean, basically, we suggest hardware scaling or vertical scaling or horizontal scaling.
Right. So here one important point: predictions and assumptions in performance testing will be a false commitment and blind promise to the customers that will put the entire teams into escalations. We cannot give any predictions and assumptions by calculating 1/4 of the environment to the actual size, and we cannot tell to the customers this is what can happen when I test with 8,000 users on performance testing environment. We can't do that. The reason is because when I say virtual user generator or a virtual user, the word virtual itself says as which is not really existing, right? It replaces the human user and it is giving a simulation of the real-time activity. And if I ask many of you, when I'm trying to log in my load test, is my virtual user really opening a browser, then typing in the URL address in the address bar and then clicking on login?
No,
No.
not really.
Not really, right? So
Yes,
this
sir.
is how this is happening on a virtual environment, which can guarantee the customer if your application is having this percentage of load, this user base, the application can have this behavior. This is what we are trying to tell him, right? Nothing else. So it is very important for you to uh, understand, to clearly explain the customer that you are supposed to test everything on prod like environment. You have to test everything on a real code with the real data, with the real kind of data. I know that it is very difficult for all of you to get the sensitive data, production data for your testing. We cannot use that. It is a security violation. So do you have some data masking concepts? You can create some kind of similar format of data by using some test data tools, and you can test it on the mirror image of the same size of prod size environment, or it can be on the production environment. Now the customers are now accepting, allowing the performance teams to work on production environments. Not all the environments, especially BFSA. The remaining environments, the customers want to know what is that happening in the real time. They are taking the real inputs, the real feedback from the real users. They're trying to see if the issues continuously um, continuously occurring in all the cases. Accordingly, they are trying to check. So please make your customer to understand the importance of the exact replica of prod like environment, the data that you're used for your testing, or the number of tires, whatever the softwares and hardware that is available on production environments, the same kind of stuff should be available on the environment that you're testing as well. Okay, the including the versions, including minor changes on the web app DB servers, whatever the voice that you have in web server. Again, if your application server is Windows in prod, and if CentOS in prod, and if you're using Windows server in uh, testing environment with the same hardware config, the performance will definitely vary, because every operating system, it got its own unique way of working style. So there is some kind of difference in numbers in any of the metrics. So make sure that you are using the same kind of hardware software config and the exact environment for your load testing. And this is all you have to ask: what is the client side? For example, every application nowadays, they are developed on Angular, right? Now Angular, they have changed over. Now they come up with React JS. They are developing the application client side with React. There are so many things: JavaScript, Node.js, Knockout.js, React.js. So the look and feel will completely change, and React.js will definitely improve the performance, right? I don't know how many of you know what is Ajax. Okay, increased use of Ajax in the client side will improve the performance of your application. Okay, we'll talk about that in detail in client side performance testing and tuning. So you have to ask what is the client side, what are all the browsers that the users are using, and you need to understand the various internal and external components that you have in your architecture. You need to have the detailed understanding of the architectural diagram, the use case traversals, the different user roles, and all the other different functionalities that you have in your application. If you have any functional defect in your application, doing performance testing will be a waste of time. Make sure that every functional defect has been closed, and ensure that everything is working from the functional team, and accordingly take a decision. Okay, you need to understand, you need to ask how the application flow from the end user level to the backend is happening. So what are all the different protocols that you have in all the web app DB servers? Do you have a proxy? What is the firewall components, network components? And okay, you need, most importantly, you need to ask what are all the different countries that are accessing your application. Accordingly, you need to set up the load generators, right? So you need to understand how many typical users are accessing your application globally from different geographical locations. Okay, so for example, if you take the hardware, you'll be asking all these things: what is the web server, what is the web server? You will understand you will ask the processor type, the clock speed of the processor, the number of processors, what is the memory, what is the memory type, what is the disk type. Most of the servers are now using SSDs, right? There is a type called RAID. There is the capacities, if they are load balanced, how they are load balanced. You'll be asking all the details of all the database servers, web servers, and application servers, the licensing information, all these things. Okay, and again, why are you not using WebSphere? You can use WebLogic. Apache Tomcat is a open source free web app server. Why are you not using it? Okay, you are using uh, JProfiler, which is a commercial tool for profiling. Why are you not using Apache Skywalking? Something, there is a profiler tool which is a complete open source. You can take heaps, threads, lot of other things. You can do it. Why are you selecting this WebLogic? You should have an answer. Okay, there is a reason for everything that will be explained in detail in the design phase of your performance engineering process. The hardware sizing, for example, how do you decide this much of RAM with this much of hardware is required to do performance testing? How do you decide the database server? How do you decide the RAM on application server? All these things matters, right? So you'll be from the software side, you'll be also asking the SSL certificate information, the configuration settings. Okay, the operation, the OS related activities. If it is updated with the new patches, packs, you will also ask all these details. You will initially take all the default settings, but depending upon case to case, if for some secured reasons for banking applications, there are some configuration settings available from the client side or the customer side. You need to talk to the networking team and get all the settings enabled. before you go ahead with performance testing, right? So all these things are equally important. If, for example, if it is a .NET application, if you're running your application on IIS, right, a .NET based application, so you will be asking what is the IIS version, what is the OS version of it, what are the default configurations, what is the software version, what is the patches that you have, and most importantly, database server. If you're using multiple databases like Oracle, Postgres, MongoDB, Cassandra, NoSchema databases, with schema bases, you need to understand all the information of that database server. All right. And most importantly, before you start testing, before you define the scope of your application, you need to understand with which application, what are all the technologies that are involved to develop that application, because you need to monitor all of them, right? And if you go to the network section, right, I'm sorry, you are asking the networking type, you are asking all the networking protocols. If at all, if you want to monitor, for example, your customer, if one of your requirement from your customer is network bottlenecks identification, you need to take TCP IP dumps. Okay, you need to check what is that happening in the TCP IP dumps. Okay, uh, for example, you also have how many ports are open. You need to check how many ports are open. Okay, how many connections are connection. You will see the connection rate, right? If you remember about one metric, there is a metric called connection rate. If you see the number of connections, you will see the number of passed connections, number of refused connections, number of timeout connections. So if you have increased number of timeout connections, increased number of refused connections, it means that there is some issue with the TCP IP, there is some issue with the ports. So you need to go back and identify, troubleshoot, or you need to analyze what is really happening from the networking side. Okay, you also need to worry about the network bandwidth. There are some specific network monitoring tools like SolarWinds Network Performance Monitor, or there are other open source and commercial tools to monitor everything in specific. The quality of service you can monitor. Okay, the quality of the transfer rate, the bytes per second, bytes sent per second, received per second, all these things you'll be monitoring. Okay, and if you look at the monitoring tools, right, there are hundreds and thousands of monitoring tools. Okay, there is a monitoring tool called Spectrum from CA, which is 20 years old product, which will monitor all the network devices. It can monitor your switches, it will monitor your routers, it will monitor your NIC cards, so many things, other things. Because whatever the router that you're using for the IT companies, right, it will serve a lot many people. The routers are very big. If you take the Cisco routers, each router will cost in crores actually. Some of the routers are costing up to 2 CR, 2.5 CR. The reason is because the availability it gives to the number of users is what matters. The capacity of the router, the speed of the router. Okay, when we talk about performance engineering, everything from server side, network side, user side, operational level side, everything matters. Okay, so in the load implementation section, you will be asking all the protocols that are being used in between the client and the server. Okay, most importantly, you need to create a workload model. This is also called workload modeling, workload profiling, and this is called a task distribution diagram. How many number of users, if your application maximum handling capacity is 2000 users, how many number of users are continuously logging into the application concurrently without even time gap? If you're using IRCTC, right, from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, there will be 2000 concurrent users on the application. They will be clicking on the login button continuously without even millisecond time gap. That is called concurrency. How many number of users are clicking on login? How many number of users are searching for an item? how many number of users are making the payment, how many number of users are newly registering. All these things are basically the task distribution diagram. The task distribution diagram, the load test, the workload model, rarely you will get it from the stakeholder, because most of the customers are not aware of the performance testing and engineering activities. Again, it is your own responsibility. You have to create the workload model right from the scratch. Little's law is not always the answer. There is a lot of process, lot many tips and tricks that are there to create an efficient workload model for a complex system. Right? If your application is there in production, you need to analyze the production traffic. You need to capture the various log files of all the web app DB servers. You need to capture all this information, not for 24 hours time. People actually deploy one production monitoring tool. They'll capture all the logs, right? They will see all the production traffic that is coming in. They will see the number of hits on each and every individual functionality. They'll deploy this tool in the production environment for 7 days or 30 days, and they take a report for the 30 days or 7 days or 15 days, and accordingly they will decide what percentage of load has to be assigned to each functionality. That is how you create a efficient workload model. Okay, so yeah, well, there is a separate article for separate session for this, creating a workload model and capacity model for load testing in our program. So we'll talk there in detail. So the task usage, the peak hours, off peak hours, right? If you take an example, TCS is having some 4 lakh IT employees, right? If you take in the morning time, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., all the users are supposed to log in into Ultimatics, something called Ultimatics. So half of 1 lakh users must be logging into the application from 8 to 10 a.m. It is the vice versa for the US people. They'll be logging out, right? Our morning is evening for them, right? So the peak time of login, the peak time of logout, depending upon the geographical locations, you have to monitor all of them, and you have to work on the workload task distributions. Okay, you need to identify all the geographical locations, the location of the users, and what is the peak usage and off peak usage of all the different functionalities that you have in the application. Based upon that, you need to identify the concurrency, simultaneous accessing with the number of users is all what you have to define in this workload profiling. All right. So there are other activities that will take place on other servers. As I said, the backup activity on the database server or something. You need the batch jobs will be running, the recovery process will be running. You need to identify the time slots, because when your test is running, if the auto recovery backup process has been initiated when the load test is happening, it will give a very big impact on the performance, right? You need to ensure that whenever your load test is happening on a production environment, all of the background processes are stopped. They're not running from the backend, right? So you need to identify the critical scenarios, critical use cases, the highly accessed transactions. You need to define the acceptance criteria. Depending on that, there is a difference between the exit criteria and entry criteria, acceptance criteria and reception criteria. And there is something called mitigation plan, where we list down all the risks in the project. For example, if some of the people in my team, there are 5 people, 3 people have resigned all of a sudden in the middle of the project. So how is that I can come back with a new plan, with a new efficient plan, in order to reduce the impact of my application workload or something, right? There are a lot of things will be pending, and it may extend your project timelines. So you need to come up with an efficient timeline. So you need to ask all of them, and everything has to be documented. Okay, you need to understand the maximum handling capacity, how many users are typically accessing the system, what is the maximum number of users, what is the maximum load that we have to generate, what is the license that you have for your load runner. If the customer wants us to test with 2000 users, and if the license is only for 800 users, VUD, virtual user days, which will calculate the number of users and duration. You cannot run the test with 1000 users, right? Some customers wants us to test the same 1000 users test for 3 times, because you will have 3 major changes that are happening in the application. For every change, you have to test all the application, you have to test with the same load, same duration, and you have to compare the results. You have to see if there is an improvement in the resource utilizations of the servers, if there is an improvement in the response times, if there is a degradation in the throughput. All these things you have to monitor. Okay, you have to ask what is the maximum load, what is the typical connection speed, the bandwidth that they get, what are the different operating systems the people will access, the different browsers they use. So what is the projected users are being increased. For example, in the next quarter, if your application is really good, right? If the application is really good, increasing, it will definitely increase your return of investment. And if you take Amazon or Flipkart, the user base has been increased in a very short period of time. If you take First Cry, same thing happened. Initially, they launched the site. Within the next 3 months, many of the people came onto this First Cry app, right? So many things actually. Even if you take the Food Panda, right? It was very good, with very good infra, very good performance. Everything was very good. Swiggy started slowly, and the user base on Swiggy has started uh, like you did not. We can't even expect. Like there are some lakhs of users that has been increased in 3 months of time, because of the offers, because of the usability, because of the UI friendliness, or many things, performance, the ease of using the application. All these things matters. So if you have an unexpected growth, your application has to sustain. Let me tell you one example. Your customer is asking you to test the application with 1000 users max. But as an industry standard, you will be testing your application with 1050 users or 1100 users on the safer side. So you test with 1050 users or 1100 users, and you publish the results to the customer saying that this is what can happen when you're testing with 1000 users. The reason is because even the application is having some issues when 1000 users are accessing, even if it is going beyond, sometimes some unexpected users to plus 50 users or plus 75 users are coming into the onto the application, then the application has to respond without any issues. So as an industry standard, we'll add 5% to the maximum handling capacity, and we test it. That is a COE best practice. I don't know how many of you are aware of it. Okay. So the batch processes, date, all these things you'll be clearly asking, and most importantly, you will ask the access to the production environment if you have, or if you how you get the test data, you will ask it. Okay, all these things will be asked, and these are the set of list of questionnaire that you need to put that in a document, which is called non-functional requirement gathering or kind questionnaire document. Before you start any of the project, you have to send all this list of questions to all the teams sitting across the projects in the organization, the development team, the networking team, the app server team, the DBAs, and you have to get all the informations, and then only you have to take the sign off from the customer saying that the requirements good, okay to me. Uh, yeah, please go ahead is what you need to get from your customer. Every document you have to take, you have to have a meeting. If you're following an agile methodology, you break your NFRs into bits and pieces. You clearly explain the plan to your customer stakeholder, and tell him how you will measure the progress of your performance improvements on the applications. And for everything you have to take a sign off as a best practices in order to avoid all the issues. All right. So this is all about non-functional requirement gathering document. If I talk about the second common mistake, right? Test after completion of the test, right? Most of the performance engineers, uh, many of the sensitive clients again, performance test results, right? They are not validated up to the expectations. Some of the customers say that run the test, give me the default report. They can't do anything with it. Even if that is the case, you have to educate your customer that there is a different report with some additional graphs that I can plot, that I can correlate. I can correlate some of the graphs to see what increased with what, and I can give you the difference. That is what you have to do from your side. Simply generating a default HTML report, saving it in different formats like Word or PDF will not help anyone in the team. Okay, test success and results need to be validated, okay, to ensure that all the testing scripts are working properly and committing transactions inside the system or the application if you are considering each and every server. Okay, and depending upon the environment that you are doing performance testing, right? You being a performance engineer or a developer or a system administrator, after the completion of the test, how do you verify it? For example, if a load test, if it is designed to create some 30,000 orders per hour, how do you validate it? You got my question? Your test objective is to create 30,000 transactions in an hour. Your test is completed. Do you see this article? The first and second article, okay. You type common mistakes in performance testing. I have written an article clearly explaining all these things. Okay, so tell me, any idea? Your test objective is to create some 20,000 orders per hour. You run a test for 2 hours. Which means it has to create 30,000 orders in 2 hours of test duration. How do you know that all the 30,000 orders has been created in your load test? How many of them are passed? How many of them are failed?
So based on the transactions, we got to know that how many orders are created and how many are failed.
That is tool is telling you, right?
Yes.
The tool is telling you. But how do you ensure that the data is reflected?
In
So
the
we should
database, we can check it.
query the
We can
database and
You have to
for that
query
particular
the,
direction.
yeah, yes, you have to, someone told me, right? You have to query the database,
For that particular time duration.
right? For the particular duration, you can verify the same by querying the database, or you can look at the flat files or logs that are created. Okay, if a load test is designed to create 20,000 orders per second, per hour, sorry, not second, per hour, or 10,000 orders per hour, all the number of orders per hour should be visible in the database at the end of the test, right?
Yeah.
So the third point is, if you're not finalizing the workload characteristics, or if you don't know the workload modeling, okay, if you don't have the clear focus on the targets or anything on the information, right? The performance, the workload modeling, the workload profiling, if you don't have any of them in place, if you fail to identify the workload characteristics, in this case you will get some kind of incorrect analysis and recommendations. Whatever you are publishing it to the client, they cannot guarantee the performance of your application. So performance engineers, you have to ensure all the performance testing that is done on the performance testing environment is same as production environment to avoid incorrect results and recommendations. Okay, make sure that whatever the environment that you are selecting is the right one. Select the right tool and execute accordingly. And the fourth point is, the load test duration is kept very small. Okay, all the components, right? all the components are all I'm sorry, my throat was bad, please excuse me for that. So all the components within a computer, I mean within an application, right, they can work for a steady state for some time, right? 30 minutes or default 1 hour will work efficiently. But if you have a continuous hitting on the application for a prolonged period of time, then only you will be seeing the real time usage of the application, right? That is what will happen in the real time. The users will continuously access the application without any time gap. Okay, so to understand what is that really happening with all the servers and the infrastructure or architecture, you need to, if you want to get the correct results, the test duration should be uh, long enough so that results will be captured only during the steady state, and it will give some efficient results which can guarantee some performance to the customer. Okay, and this kind of approach, right, it will also help you to uh, understand some of the common bottlenecks every time you get, irrespective of any users. Okay, if there is an application problem, if you're running a test, it will the the CPU will immediately trigger to to 70%. You'll see a spike, then it will for it will have a drop. It will have a constant usage of 25%. The reason is because it can be because of some temporary objects, too many unnecessary objects. The garbage collection will fail to identify them, delete them. All these things can happen. So irrespective of uh, the number of hours, I'm talking about the duration. So you need to have some prolonged steady state to see the common issues, common performance problems. If you test with 50 users or 150 users, 1500 users, you will be seeing all of them. Okay. uh, so, and the fifth point is the test data. I told you, right, if the test data, if you're not testing the application with the real data, with the real code, not prod like environment, it will be very problem for you to test it. If at times, if the data is unique, if you want to simulate some lakhs of records of data, every time if it is unique, you have to take the help of some test data generation tools. You have to create lakhs of data. You have to take the help of the DBA. You have to ask him to create upload all this created data into the respective table where your application is hitting. You need to identify the data access path, and once you get a successful confirmation saying from the DBA saying that all the data has been successfully uploaded, you take some 5 to 10 records randomly and you try to access them, search them from the front end to understand if you're able to search. If you're able to search, it means that all the data is successfully uploaded, and then you will proceed with the performance testing, right? So if a, for example, if a query that is taking less than 1 second to if a query that is taking 1 second or 2 seconds to complete on a 10 GB database or 20 GB database, actually it may take 4 seconds or 5 seconds on a 100 GB database. Okay, you never know, because it is not always the problem with the hardware and software that you're using from the database server. So the amount of data or the existing amount of growth rate must be considered while doing load testing on the database. If your target is database server, you need to consider all the growth of the existing amount of data, and you have to consider the growth rate. Yeah, and you need to check few other parameters if you are targeting, if your objective is to test your database. All right. So I told you, right, there is a lot of gap between the test environment and production environment. There is no direct mathematical formula that can be used to extrapolate results. Okay, if you're observing some results on a lower configuration or on a higher configuration, you cannot any formulas, or you don't have any direct tips and tricks or some best practices to understand what is that is really happening between the production and test environment. Okay, for example, if your web page is taking some 4 seconds to load on a single CPU server, right? It will not take the same time on a 4 CPU server. It may take more than that. It may take more than 4 seconds, right? So it is always recommended to carry out an environment which is comparable to production. Okay. So another point is, let me see, I forgot. Yeah, the network is not simulated properly. Okay. So the network will be decided by the network teams, and whenever you're testing, right, whenever you're scripting or whenever you're running a test, you have to use the maximum bandwidth for your load test, right? Maximum bandwidth for your load test. Use maximum bandwidth in the bandwidth option. Runtime settings, use maximum bandwidth. You're not using any of the custom bandwidth, or you're not using any of the available bandwidth, right? So the location of the end users has to be considered. You need to check the latency, and your application can be uh, accessed by using 1 Mbps, or it can be used by LAN or WAN, or it can be used by 50 Mbps, 1 Gbps. So you know, right, the performance will vary from speed to speed. 1 Mbps and 10 Mbps, 60 Mbps will differ, obviously. So you have to make use of the maximum bandwidth, and you have to do your load testing. And most importantly, before you perform this load testing, most of the companies prepare something called non-functional test plan, okay, or performance test plan. Both the performance test plan and test strategy are same.
No,
What
it's
is the
not.
what
So
is the
usually,
difference between test plan and strategy?
test plan will have the scope and the scope, and objective, and then scenarios. What are the scenarios? Workload modeling, everything, and then timelines. The test strategy is something how we are going to do. So what tool we are going to use, and
Test study
detail.
is a one-time activity. Test strategy is one-time activity, and plan is the iterative one based on the release.
Going activity, right? So basically, at a very high level, planning is all about what we are doing, and strategy is about how we are doing, right? So most of the companies will have one single document which includes, which is called non-functional test plan, which includes both strategy and plan in it. But some of the companies, they differentiate it. They'll have two documents. One is a test plan and one is a strategy. And you have templates for that. Some best practices you have to add all of them in test plan about what you're doing and how you're doing. And you also need to take a sign off from the customer and all other teams before you start load testing. All right. So whenever you are giving the scripting, doing scripting, testing, monitoring, analysis, okay, creation of test data, creation of test data environment. Okay, some of the scripts will give you a big trouble. So they are called man hours, right? Basically, for a simple script, they'll give 2 days. For a complex script, they'll give 4 days. Working hours. So there are some terminology for these estimations and tasks. So you have to identify all the scripts complexity, the environment complexity, the licensing information, the test data creation. You have to get in touch with all the different teams. Okay, and the effort has to be allocated accordingly by talking to all the architects. I'm sorry. So so I have clearly given what is good, what is best, and what is better here. If you see here, you can clearly see it. And performance analysis and tuning is the most important part. Most of the people don't get an opportunity to tune it because tuning is expensive. Okay, and people, so many clients have different dedicated teams to actually take care of all these tuning activities. The performance engineer, again, he will address all the performance issues within a system or an application. he will do some kind of correlation and analysis of all the performance metrics for all the servers that he has monitored with the help of APM tools, and he can tell you he will address the analysis actually. Okay, he can tell you, he can give the root cause of it, but he cannot, the performance engineer cannot give the potential fix for the same. So performance leads, engineers, SMEs, architects related to specific technology, for example, the DBS, the Linux administrators, network administrators, they have to involve, okay, to generate all these recommendations to improve the performance. Any recommendations, right? They have to be applied from all the servers on the tested application, and they have to tune all of them, and they have to retest it to see whether they are helping to improve the performance or not. So the testing, tuning, engineering is a very huge task. In analysis is an iterative process, and it should ideally continue until all the performance SLAs are met, the objectives are met, the customer requirements are achieved. Okay, so this is what the last one is performance test reports. As I told you, it is not publishing the default report. It is all about capturing all the different elements, metrics of all the client side and server side, and documenting all of them, writing our own analysis by getting in touch base with all the different teams, having a meeting or having a calls. And when you run the test for the second time after a potential fix, in that report you have to clearly state what has changed with what is the percentage of improvement that happened with respect to performance. All these things you have to clearly explain to the customers, stakeholders, organizations in the way that will help, and it will give you a value add into your project or your organization. So okay, so it is a very lengthy process, extremely tricky. Okay, you should have a proper planning, you should adopt a process, you should follow some of the stringent efficient process. You should have a very good communication. Lack of communication will lead to disasters. You should have very good communication with all the teams, especially the development teams, the DBAs, whosoever is involved in performance engineering activities. You have to clearly ask them what is that fix you have given it for the issue that I have addressed. Please let us know. We have to explain it to the customers. You have to be very careful, very precautious when dealing with the customer, because n number of users will be accessing it in the real time. 0.5 seconds of delay will give you some millions of dollars loss in the application, right? If there is no availability, if something is going down in the production, if something is not responding, people will stop using it. A classic example is, if if my friend is asking for a money transfer for his medical emergency, I added a payee and I did an IMPS transfer, right? I transferred 2 lakhs funds to my friend from ICICI Bank, let's say. The amount has been debited from my account. The same amount has not been credited to the respective account, my friend's account, which is a very big bottleneck. With this thing, right, I'll tell to my friend that the amount has been transferred and he's not seeing it. So in this situation, the customer care is saying that there is some issue with the system. The amount will get reflected in 7 working days. Do you agree with that? You don't. The customer don't agree with that, and you forget about that case. But the customer from now, with this experience, he will not. He'll close his account from ICICI Bank. He'll move to Citibank or Axis Bank, which is really good in handling all these online transactions. Even if some situation is happening like this, the customer care, if they are immediately able to roll back your money to your account within the next 10 minutes, that is an excellent service. So all these things really matters in performance, and you have to handle them very carefully. Okay. To me, a performance engineer, performance testing engineer, or performance engineer is like a doctor. Okay. He identifies, he'll write all the tests to understand where the issue is. You'll have a list of metrics, like if you have a CBP, or if you have creatine, if you have any other value from LFT tests, right? You see a reference range. If there is any reference range that is exceeded beyond the thresholds, you have to go to the respective department. You have to go to uh, the oncology department. If something is changed in the blood values, you have to go to gynecology, you have to go to gastroenterology. Depending upon the problem that you're seeing in the blood report, he will give the right medicine and he'll fix it, and he'll repeat the tests, and you'll see whether it is the same or if it is in the normal limits or not, right? So performance test engineer is not equal to performance engineer. Performance testing tester role, performance test engineer role is different. Performance engineer role is different. But now if you take all the practices, all the companies, all the JDs with emerging tech stack, with the recent technology trends, all the performance engineers has to be like an all-rounder. It is he or she who has to install the database, who has to configure all the files, who has to make connection establishments between the web app DB servers, who has to take care of the load balancing algorithms techniques. Okay, should have some good hands-on experience, minimum experience on core Java development. He should have one scripting knowledge. So all these things will take time. If you, to become a successful performance engineer, we also have, for example, I have written an article to help all of you guys. Skills required to be a perfect performance engineer. It's the same article in my D zone. If you go here, I have clearly written, considering all the different uh, challenges, keeping all the different challenges in mind, I have clearly written what is that you have to adopt, okay, from the recent market trends. Okay, I have clearly written. This is another session that we have planned. Okay, so this is all about today's session. Yeah, I am done for the. I'm done for today. If you have, thanks all of you for joining. If you have any questions, you can ask me now.